Hey guys, it's Ryan here with HobbiesofaMan. Once again, and today we're going to be doing our monthly ramble for the month of January. So, that meme that talks about the difference between comics and manga is making the rounds again. It's something that happens every couple months, right? But this time I saw someone, I think it's someone that works in comics, quote tweet some poster of the meme talking about how the difference between manga and comics is a useless thing to have. And I disagree. I asked him, and I talked to them. I'll show you the tweet thread here if you guys want to see it. But basically, I couldn't comprehend why they were being so obtuse about it. Like, yes, comic books and manga are the same medium. They are the comic medium, a combination of words and panel layouts and drawings in order to create a story. However, there is a difference. People don't just like randomly decide to call this thing this and that thing that, right? And distinguish between them even if they are the same, right? Like, we call an SUV and a sedan for a reason, right? Those reasons might be arbitrary, but at the end of the day, it is a distinction that matters because people give it, importance, right? And so I don't think it's a useless distinction. And in fact, I think that it's rather obtuse of people to say that there is no difference. Because yes, everyone understands fundamentally they are the same type of medium. But that doesn't mean that they are the same. If they were, manga would not be gaining popularity at the same time as American comic books sinking in popularity, right? Because why would you want Japanese comics when your American comic books are the same as them? It doesn't make sense. It is like truly like basically a desire to not want to understand the difference. And so that's what I want to talk about today. Are manga and comic books different? And the answer is yes. But it's also no, because yes, they are the same medium. And so that nuance, I think, is important. And I think it's relevant to us to be able to admit this and kind of deal with it, because we see all the time, right, that Western publishers want to make that manga money, and they try to do it by changing the trim size or changing the style of the art, but somehow it doesn't land. Even if people that don't know the difference pick them up, something about them is different. And I think that that something is the way that stories are told, the voice that is used, the way that things are expressed, the fact that, the sensibilities are different. And I think that even though we can't articulate that very easily, we notice and we understand this instinctively, right? At least I feel like I do. When I read Invincible and I read My Hero Academia, they're both superhero comics. One is a manga, one is an American comic book. And I feel that they are different. Not just because this plot line is different, but because the fundamental underlying cultural difference exists and it feels palpable, right? And sometimes I think the American culture is better. Like some of the things in My Hero Academia, even though it's a pretty tame series, are unnecessarily raunchy, right? I'm fine with them, but I understand that other people are not, and so that's why I'm making this point. But at the same time, some things in Invincible are too, but they're slightly different. They're not so in your face. They're there, and sometimes they're played for laughs, but they're not a pervasive part of the content like they would be in My Hero Academia, right? It's very unlikely that a character like Minoru Mineta is ever going to show up in a Western comic book. At least not in a way that is like engaging it by being nice to it, right? Like Minoru Mineta does not face the consequences that he would in the Western comic book, in the Japanese comic book. And that is a fundamental difference, right? And even beyond like the cultural slash intangibles that are pervasive in difference in between the two types of comics, there is a fundamental difference in the way that you consume manga. It has to be translated. It has to be popular enough for you to be able to get it. It has to be a certain trim size. It has to be a certain price. It has to be in black and white. Those are all significant, valuable differences from a Western comic book that is larger and thinner. It's less pages. It's serialized in a different way. It's not translated usually. I mean, sometimes Western comic books are translated, like they're like from European creators that are Italian or Spanish or, you know, French, and so they get translated into English. But they're not necessarily fundamentally super different, you know, intrinsically, right? And I feel like these differences are clear and precise and are like fundamentally why manga is different from comic books. And I don't even want to get into the fact that, you know, comic books are harder to read, or maybe not even harder to read, harder to get into than manga. And I have noticed a problem, personally, that is that when I first started getting into comic books, I 100% agreed with the meme, right? Comic books are hard to get into. However, the more that I read comic books, and the more that I learn to navigate the comic book sphere, especially the superhero stuff, the more I feel like it's not that difficult. And so sometimes when someone is like, damn, it's impossible to find the right place to start, I do feel like those comic book people that are like, nah, dude, it's easy. Just pick up a random volume or a random issue and go from there. But I then go back 3 years in the past and remember, oh, no, it is difficult. It is annoying to have to research things before you get into the series, before you get into a title character, right? And that's pretty unlikely to happen in manga. Don't get me wrong. There is a problem sometimes with something like Gundam, right? Or like Umineko, I think is what it's called, or something like Fate. But those are very specific and rare instances. It is not necessarily the most common thing. Now, you can argue My Hero Academia is tough to get into because I don't know which version of My Hero Academia I'm supposed to get, right? Because there's like 5 different My Hero Academia series. But I don't think that's true, because if you open them, you'll be able to tell if the characters are the same ones from the movie or not, or like from the TV show or not. And if they're not, don't pick that up. Like it is much more easy to understand that than it is like this volume 1 of Batman versus this volume 1 of Batman versus this other volume 1 of Batman versus this event of Batman versus this other event of Batman versus Nightwing Batman versus Bruce Wayne Batman versus, you know, Batman 89 versus Batman where it's Bruce's dad. Like there's a lot of differences fundamentally between the two things, even if they are ultimately the same medium. And I find it insane that people try to say that it's not true. I don't know. Am I crazy here? Let me know down in the comments. Thank you guys very much for watching, and I really hope you guys appreciated this video. So see you guys later.